You are listening to Faithless Brewing, a Magic the Gathering podcast for the Spike Rogue. Each week we design new decks for tournament play. We put our creations to the test and share our findings on the air. Jodah the Unifier brings 5-color nonsense to a whole new level, with Cascade for Legends and a massive anthem effect. Then on the Flashback, testing results with Soul of Windgrace, the newest staple in Modern and Pioneer. That's all coming up on Faithless Brewing. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Faithless Brewing podcast. I'm your host, Dan Schriever, also known as Cavedan online. Joined today by my guy in Buenos Aires. You know him as Morde to Light. It's Emmy Sagasti. Emmy, welcome.
Heyo, thanks Dan. How is it going? How is the new life now that the sun is rising there while it's 3 a.m. here?
Yeah, everything's topsy-turvy. I mean, this is wild. I'm like 6 hours ahead of you now. But, yeah, it's good. Start the morning off right. I decided to take a break from getting my face pushed in with Bard class decks to record a podcast with y'all.
Of course. Sadly, the Zero Vision gang is a bit too busy to join us today, but that doesn't mean they're not gonna get their influx of ideas during the next few days. Also, you said topsy-turvy and my brain immediately realized that's the first time I have ever heard that phrase outside being a combo card in Hearthstone. So is the topsy-turvy? My brain goes to that card and then was like, is that a normal expression? It should be. It likely is.
It is, but you don't hear it too often.
Okay.
It's kind of like old-fashioned.
Because my brain went to that Hearthstone card and I was like, no, that's not where it comes from. It has to be an expression. So yeah, we have some beautiful brewing for you guys today. Finally, we have the monthly project winner by barely any margins, the closest it has ever been between two cards, and the huge advantage they took over the rest.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of brew sessions in a row. I mean, we just talked about Mario on Friday, but we are kicking off another month of our joint project with Serum Visions. And like Mord says, it's just the two of us today, but as we keep working on the winning card, we'll check in week to week, see what we've learned, try out a deck or two, and then we'll have the Serum Visions gang come join us at the end to recap what we learned. So, Mord, how did it go? What happened? What are our results?
So, luckily, I'm gonna start saying the good part. March of Portioning Life didn't win. It did get more votes than it should have because it got more than one vote. The only person that could actually vote for it was the one that nominated. Every single other person is heresy.
Well, actually, Kilgore Trout vowed to not vote for it. After hearing your evisceration of the card, he said he wanted to see if it could get 0 votes, but it did not. It got quite a lot of support, actually.
It got more votes than 3 beautiful cards. Cabal's Druidic Vow, which I didn't have any hope for, but Aggressive Mining and Lowless Troll are cards that I at least hoped had a fighting chance and not get crushed by even March of Portioning Life.
But those are all great cards.
That's the problem, they're too good.
That's true. Yeah.
People love to see us suffer a tiny... It's either card is extremely fun or we suffer. That's why March of Portioning Life got 10 votes.
Yeah, you can't have your card be too good.
Exactly. 5th, we got Erayo, which was a fan favorite of a lot. I actually thought I would say it a bit higher. 4 is Danitha, which is the Hammer Equiper. But 5 and a 4/4 gets you stuff. 3rd was a card that keeps getting top 3, but keeps losing in the finals, which is Necroticus, with 19 votes.
No. Oos, you're so close.
Oos keeps losing the race by a tiny mile. At this rhythm, we're gonna have to give it its own month just as a pity vote, right? Just because he deserves it.
Well, if it was the summertime, I definitely would. There's not as much going on in the summer, but I mean... We'll see. We'll see if we can fit it in. There's a lot happening with Dominaria and Brothers War coming out.
So you
gotta keep voting for it.
You're gonna stay in your pit for a while. And with a 12-point difference from 19 to 31, we have the second place Mechanized Production, which was a fan favorite, clearly. The idea of going off with bloods or clues made people super excited.
Yeah, a card that I didn't have too much hopes for, but I think, you guys made some great points about it. It's cheaper than Battle of Wits. It's much easier to enable and actually does something on its own, right? It generates copies. And it has that beautiful text of "you win the game."
Ah, you win the game.
Mechanized Production had a big lead at first, and I thought, this card was going to run away with it. But as the week of voting progressed, it turns out that Jodah the Unifier also had amazing support. I mean, these two cards just way ahead of everything else. Way ahead. I've never seen such a big difference.
So we have Jodah the Unifier as the unifier of all your votes. Winner by one vote, 32 to 31. And it seems people just love 5-color legendaries.
I mean, I guess, when I first saw this card, I thought, well, it's like Niv at home, but we have, we're not going to play a second-rate Niv,
Or will
this
we?
This is not Niv. It turns out we will, because... So this is an open question for me. Obviously, we're going to do our best. We're going to think through the pieces of the card. What are the synergies? How to maximize those? How to even get Jodah in play? And what is Jodah doing that Niv can't do? And it turns out that the answers to those are all pretty interesting. But yeah, Jodah the Unifier is our winning card.
And we're going to have to go deep into it. We have a lot of ideas ranging from Pyre humans to aggro humans to why not just bulky?
Exactly. And, who knows? Maybe this will be Niv Mizzet 3.0. I'm not sure what Niv Mizzet 2.0 was. Was that just Omnath, or was it something else?
I think Omnath is Niv Mizzet 5.0. It's a straight up huge upgrade, and then we have this as Niv Mizzet 0.5.
Oh, Omnath is like when the Terminator 2000 comes back in time to fight the original Terminator.
Exactly.
It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger has to now defend against a more advanced Terminator. That was Niv versus Omnath. Well, we still like Arnold.
Oh, good old Arnold. You are so close.
All right, Morde, tell us about Jodah the Unifier. It's got a lot of text on it. We better remind ourselves what it does.
So, 5 mana 5/5 legendary creature, one of every color, so Booberg, human wizard. Legendary creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. So immediately this is a +1/+1 on its own, so even on its own it's a 5 mana 6/6. That's the background. However, the most intriguing part is the next one. Besides being a huge anthem if you have a few legendaries flying around, whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land with lesser mana value. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So we have Legendary Cascade. Whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, you cascade into another legendary spell.
That's very interesting, right? I mean, Cascade by itself is a fascinating mechanic, or at least it used to be until they made it very simple with all the free spells. So there's a question of okay, how do you build a Cascade deck? Or Cascade chain, I should say. But then because Jodah only sees legendaries, you can skip the cards you don't want to see, right? So if you want to make sure that all of your legendaries are concentrated at certain spots on the curve, you can do that. Or if you just want a complete, everything in my deck is a legend, then you could just get total chaos every time you trigger Jodah.
I'm just sad they went the coward way and said whenever you cast from your hand and didn't allow this beautiful card to actually cascade multiple times, right?
What, so it just keeps cascading? A 5 into a 4 into a 3 into a 2?
No, maybe just go 5 into 2. But yeah.
I mean, that would be... Alright. Then we would actually have something, but that's...
The first sliver does that.
It does?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Slivers all get cascaded.
Sliver spells, you have a cascade.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, maybe we can put Jodah into a first sliver deck since it's a legendary, and then we can...
And then with triple cascade. If this was whenever you cast a legendary spell, exile card, and then remove from your hand, and this was able to cascade into more cascades, I would love this card. I would play this immediately. Play this, and then immediately play a 4-drop, hope to hit a 2-drop or 3-drop into a 1-drop into a Mox Amber immediately, because you guarantee a Mox Amber after that.
So I think it actually doesn't make that big of a difference. I think that the existing ability is good enough. But that's all pie in the sky stuff. Let's get down to the details. So first, before we proceed, just to recap some of the rules interactions Morde is talking about. All right, it's a legend, a human wizard. Human, yeah, that matters. Wizard, I'm not sure about that. But yeah, we can put this in the top end of a human's deck, for example. That first clause means that Jodah is minimum 6/6, right? But that, again, only counts creatures. So if you're playing Jodah in, like, I don't know, Karth Super Friends or something, he's not going to be counting Planeswalkers and Oath of Nissas and stuff for that anthem effect. Only the creatures count towards the +X/+X.
Yes.
The cascade for legends, I think Morde explained it very nicely, right? It's buy one, get one for legends. But it has a very interesting clause, right? So it works almost exactly like Cascade, except that they did not give it the Tibalt nerf.
Exactly.
If you recall, originally Cascade didn't specify anything about playing the front or back of the card, so you could play your Bloodbraid Elf, hit a Velki, and just decide to cast the Tibalt side. They errated that after about 2 weeks of chaos in Modern, so that now you have to like check and make sure that the card you're actually putting onto the stack has the appropriate mana cost, etc., etc. So we don't see that anymore. But Jodah actually makes it possible once again. Jodah does not have that MDFC nerf, if I can call it that.
I think this card was designed before that errata. It's pretty likely it was taking into account the 2 year before set release. And the errata, I think, was during 2021, so it would make perfect sense that it just hadn't happened and they just decided it was fine to push this regardless.
I mean, I'm intrigued. Like, I know it's kind of a silly corner case thing, but it's just so sweet to get Tibalt. I think I'm going to have to try it. So just to remind us, the best one by far is Velki, which, you could set up your deck so that, you always cascade into Velki when you have Jodah in play. But there are other MDFCs that might be relevant. So, for example, there's a 1-drop legend, Valentine Dean of the Vein, right? It's kind of a crappy Kalidas Jr. 1/1 vampire, but its backside is actually a pretty decent 4/4 for 4, Lisette, Dean of the Root.
I'm worried that you wrote Yorion into a Valentine and cast the Lisette side, assuming anybody, anywhere, anytime in their life knows what Lisette does.
Oh, Lisette doesn't do anything. Just a 4/4 for 4. But that's bigger than Valentine is the important part. And, I usually ignore Valentine, but like people like Jiggy Wiggy keep putting it into decks. David always puts it into decks. He thinks it's like a pretty decent Kalidas effect, and Jiggy thinks it's a black Mox Amber enabler. So, like, it's not out of the question that you can actually use Valentine. And in this case, if I had a deck that, I wanted to, if I draw a Valki naturally, I want to like cascade into something useful, I can now cascade with Jodah and get an extra 4/4 out of the deal. Esika is a nice ramp card that if you cascade into it, you can play the Prismatic Bridge. I think those are the main ones. There's also Bergi, which becomes the Horn of Bounty. Mila becomes Luca, and Raiden becomes that weird shield. Those are the good ones.
Oh, you also get a Wrath effect if you need it, that I don't think you ever will.
Well, that's not legendary, so that will not be part of Jodah's chains.
Oh, that's not legendary. Such.
That's just a regular MDFC. You can find that anywhere.
How is that not legendary? Such.
But yeah, I'm intrigued to see like what happens if I just put a bunch of legendary MDFCs into a deck with Jodah, because the fact that you can pick either side you want lets you cascade at whatever spot on the curve you want. So yeah, that could be fun. But anyway, so that's basically how Jodah works. Next, we're going to get into some of the conceptual questions, some of the frameworks we should use to like decide what direction to explore. And I think we'll just like make that our goal for the day. We're not going to get too deep into, okay, we got to test this deck first, this deck second, because we're going to spend a month on this. So we'll get into the key questions next. And I should mention, we'll also talk about our Soul of Windgrace testing. I forgot to say that at the top. So that is our plan of attack. Given that, Morde, what should we be thinking about now for how to actually brew with Jodah?
So, the key questions that I think we have to focus on is how do we make our 5-drop that doesn't have an ETB not suck? And in what format should we do so? Or at least, once we decide a format, what do we have to focus on each of them? So I think the first random in most decks that you want to play this, you want to have a critical mass of legendary spells, so more than likely you're casting this the fair way to see in between quotes. Hitting your land drops, get value, develop a few creatures on the way, and immediately top end with a Jodah.
Well, yes, I think that's probably the safest way to do it, but wouldn't that mean that Jodah kind of sucks? Like, it doesn't have an ETB, right? So, like, if I'm just waiting to cast my game-ending 5-drop, and I'm just like, okay, 6/6, pass the turn.
I think it depends mostly on what we got on the way there. Like, if we curve out with with Ragavans into, like, something like Soul of Windgrace, or the 3-drop, there's a lot of creatures, legendary on the 2/4 creature slot that actually tap for mana, or allow you to get mana more easily. However, I think the best way could be as described with Eldritch Evolution or Neoform.
Okay, so you're saying we have the fair options of either making mana, perhaps assisted by the occasional ramp piece, or we start actually trying to like cheat it into play.
Yes. Sadly, as it doesn't have any TV, it's not one of those cheating to play for a turn, like cheating to play with Glorious Mention, that's enough. You actually need to cheat and live in play.
The benefit of cheating it into play is that you would theoretically still have some mana available, so then you could immediately cast something else. I think Pyre of Heroes might be a nice option for this. Let's say I'm in a humans tribal deck, and at some point I have my Pyre in play. I've got just a random 4-drop I don't need. I mean, this doesn't sound plausible, but let's just pretend that I have a random 4-drop I'm not using. I can Pyre that into Jodah, still have, 3 mana left over to cast another legend. I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to like imagine an explosive turn that involves putting Jodah into play and doing a cascade in the same turn.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to transform that into a 0 ETB.
However, I mean, maybe the truth is that the anthem is the better half. I could imagine cheating Jodah into play, and then now my team has +3/+3, and I just win that turn.
Yeah, +3/+3. It's a pretty good anthem. It's actually a 6-mana enchantment. The price of giving all your creatures +3/+3 is an unplayable 3-mana Celestial enchantment from Sam Ravnica.
Oh, 6-mana enchantment, yeah. Collective Blessing, I think? Something like that?
No idea. I know the art because it was in my first deck I ever played. But that's enough about its playability, right?
Yeah. But it is 6 mana. I mean, like you said, that's worth a lot. That's like 3 Force of Virtues stacked together, so that's like 6 cards worth of value. So.
Besides that way of casting it, I think one of the most attractive ones, besides Neoform or Eldritch Evolution, is something like Winota, because Yoda is a human.
Oh.
So what about a full-on legendary Winota deck? And Winota hitting Yoda would be the equivalent of it giving everything double strike or even more.
That's the first thing you talked about that actually feels like it might be powerful, right? Because let's face it, Neoform, Eldritch Evolution, and even Pyre of Heroes to an extent, these are not like A-tier cards. But Winota is an A-tier card, and it's banned in Pioneer. In Modern, we've seen that it can be good. We talked about that Yawgmoth Winota. What was it called? Yawgnota?
Yawgnota?
Yawgmoth. Yawgnota.
Yeah, the other was the name Zack tried to introduce and failed.
That's right, yeah. Winogmoth's not going to happen, Zach. I'm sorry. But Win Jodah, maybe.
Winota.
Winota, Uniter of Forces. How about that?
I had someone come on stream today and talk to me and had a bit of pity on you because I was ranting about different concepts all of a sudden, and they were like, poor Dan, that has to be what recording with Morde is like.
Mm-hmm.
Just because when I started rambling ideas, and that has stopped me already twice from going on random runs this episode already. So maybe they're right. Maybe you're a poor victim of circumstances. Finally, the other way that you suggest, Dan, is Glorious Mentions, but I think that's just insanity.
Probably? It is probably insanity. I was picturing something like, okay, my thought process was, if I have Asmo in my deck, right, that's a 0 mana legend, so that means that even Ragavan gives me a bonus 3/3. And once I've got Asmo, I've probably got cookbooks. And once I've got cookbooks, I can just discard Jodah the Unifier at some point. And then, well, I can't persist it back because that doesn't work with Legends. But I can Goryo's it back, cast another Reg Event, get another Asmo, get another cookbook. No?
No. I was picturing something of like this actually had some sense in my mind, you just made it worse. Like my idea was like 5 mana, Goryo's Vengeance, cast Rokirik, get Tibalt.
I like that. I mean, why not? Yeah, that leaves you plenty of stuff.
Being able to, on turn 5, get a 3-drop legendary plus a Tibalt. Like if your deck only has legendaries on the 3 CMC slot.
You even get the 4/4 off Rokirik.
No, you don't.
Oh, no, you don't. Because it
Cascade.
won't be in play yet.
Such.
Right.
But maybe you had a Rokirik from the previous turn.
Yeah, I mean, let's not overlook the synergy between Jodah and Rokirik. Jodah is a gold card.
Jodah is a multicolor card.
Yep.
Also, Rokirik is freaking annoying to remove if you don't have Red and 6.
That's true. So those are the main ways to like cheat Jodah into play. Bring to Light is the card that, you know, has the most pedigree. If we're thinking of, okay, Jodah and Niv cost the same, so we can apply the same heuristics to them. That is true, but Bring to Light will probably tap you out, and I think, Morde, you explained it beautifully. Bring to Light is not very good right now, at least in Modern. In Pioneer, it's still okay.
Yeah, and if I'm Bring to Lighting for Jodah, 99% of the time, it's better to Bring to Light straight up for Tibalt.
That's true, yeah. Worth noting that the only deck that is 5-0'd with Jodah so far is a Pioneer Niv deck that just has a 1 Jodah for fun.
Yeah.
But they did it twice.
Okay. Also, Claudio won with Niv today, I think.
Yeah, so it's like the mana base is good there. It's a 4 Leyline Binding deck, so you know it must be good.
How can a 4 Leyline Binding deck be bad?
I'm just going to keep reminding people that we told them to buy Leyline Bindings so that they don't get too mad about us missing on Sheoldred. We didn't tell you to buy that.
We didn't miss on Sheoldred.
We did tell you to buy Leyline Bindings.
We never said Sheoldred was bad. I'm gonna fight this.
We didn't say it was bad, but we ignored it for the most part.
We just said it was not well designed for what it should be, a card named the Apocalypse.
I definitely thought that as well about the design, although now having had it in play against me, the feelings that it elicits when it's staring across the battlefield at you are appropriate for Sheoldred. It's like...
I might be playing decks that are too interactive to say that. Like, whenever I'm playing against Rakdos in Pioneer, which isn't much, because I'm not playing much Pioneer, but whatever I do when they cast Sheoldred, I'm like, phew, imagine if this had been a real threat.
Well, you're playing the right decks then to beat up on Rakdos, but Rakdos keeps winning, so...
Card is great. I'm gonna stick to my guts and say I don't like how the design is for a card named the Apocalypse, but yeah, card is clearly good. And one of the most expensive nowadays.
It's super expensive, and I still don't see why it's good. I mean, that's like a... I'll take that question to my grave. I feel like it shouldn't be that powerful.
I love that it had 2 spots in the sideboard of Doomsday today in the Legacy Showcase qualifier that was won by Doomsday. With, as we said, 2 Sheoldred in the sideboard.
God damn it. Alright, so where were we? We were talking about how to get Jodah into play. I think we covered the best options.
Yeah, so I think it's a mixture of trying to put it into play or trying to cheaply put it into play via something like Eldritch Evolution or something like, as we said before, Winota.
Yeah. Now, other questions to think about. I think each deck can answer these next questions differently. Big one is, like, what's the actual value of Jodah? Is it the Anthem effect or is it the Cascade effect? And you could probably imagine decks built to maximize either one, like a Humans Tribal deck, a Legendary Humans Tribal, if we can call it that, probably is going to use the Anthem more than the Cascade, right? The turn you get Jodah into play, and maybe your team has like +4/+4 or whatever, if we're dreaming big.
There's a huge amount of great human legendaries, right? We have Talia, we have Honorary Human, Pre-Human Ragavan, Human in the making.
Yeah, so I think if that were a modern deck, probably the Winota is the better route. If it's Pioneer, maybe you can just go ahead and play 5-color legends and just hope for the best. Does Jodah do anything better than Niv can do? I think I mentioned that at the top. I'm still not convinced that Jodah does, but Niv does not have an anthem. Niv has pretty strict requirements on building a gold deck, where Jodah does not.
So I think the way to build it is in a way that the anthem is great, and the cascade serves as a way to keep the gas flowing. So you have to use both parts of it for it to be good. So I'm looking at legendary humans, and we have actually some great ones. Judith. Also, it's great with a lot of... Sorry, what I was about to say and got stuck is you can play a lot of hate bears like Lavinia and such, and them getting huge with Yoda, it's actually great because you stole the game with the hate bears, Talia, 3-mana Talia, I always forget the name of the Lavinia and such, and then you just win the game with the anthem, right? Your 2/1s, 2/2 transform into like 5/5s, and it's like a 1-turn clock.
I love the optimism there.
I mean,
I'm just imagining myself playing turn 2 Lavinia, turn 3 Judith, and I'm like, just wait for it. Once I get Jodah in play, it's all over.
No, I think it's more the aspect of turn 2 Talia, turn 3, I don't know, something like Anafensa, and you're getting like 5 points of damage there. And next turn, you either keep developing legendary creatures, or if you had like a mana dork, play a Judith getting for literally 11.
Yeah. Lavinia's good against Leyline Binding, I'll say that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of legendary creatures you can play on curve, like 5-color legendaries, or like 5-color stacks. For most of the hit bears, or a lot of them nowadays, are legendary creatures. So that's not even like something that you struggle with. But that seems interesting. Also, Ether Vial is a sketchy way to sneak in a Yoda.
Oh. Okay, so what if we're playing like an Ether Vial Wizards deck, and we have the Wizard cycling card, so that when we want Jodah, we can just Wizard cycle for it, and then Vial it in on 5, and then Vial in Yorion on 5 to trigger the cascade the next turn.
Wow! We're going deep! I think Vial is actually a good alternative.
So if we're trying to build toward the cascade part of Jodah, there is some question of like, what do we want our legend curve to look like? How many legends do we want to play? I mean, you want to have enough legends in the deck to actually trigger it reliably. And remember, for the cascade, it doesn't have to be creatures, right? The cascade half works with any legendary permanent, whether that's planeswalkers, whether that's Oath of Nissas, Mox Amber, Heart of Kirin, etc.
It doesn't work with Mox Amber per se.
Well, Mox Amber, you won't get anything off that. And actually, what was more likely to happen is you will triumphantly cast some other legend, and then excited to see what you hit, you'll hit a Mox Amber. But that taps for all 5 colors with Jodah, so it's not that bad. But it is a risk, right? If you start putting in Oath of Nissas and Mox Ambers into your deck, you're diluting the potential of your big cascade hits.
Maybe there's something.
Maybe. I mean, it's weird. Like I looked at a bunch of like user submitted Jodah decks, and they all had Oath of Nissa and Mox Amber. And I'm actually not sure if that's correct or not.
It's weird. I don't think so. Like, I wouldn't run them if I could avoid it. Maybe Mox Amber, yes, because of how we can power up the deck a lot. Like, it increases the fail rate, but gives it much more explosive lines. But I don't think I would run Oath of Nissa. It's a treble hit that isn't actually great for the deck.
Something to think about. All right, before we talk about different actual decks, I'll just mention a few other micro-syngergies, if we call it that. Oh boy.
He's locked.
Micro-cats, micro-kittens, to tell me about the little synergies here.
So, Kitty, wanna tell me about the rules synergies? Tell me about Ragavan. Oh, do you like it? Emphasize. Oh, so no Ragavan, okay. Okay. What's your take? Thanks for the take, Micro Kitty.
So we talked about Mox Amber kind of having a sketchy interaction with the Cascade, tapping for any color, that's nice. We talked about General Ferris, triggering off Jodah, that's also nice. Keep in mind all companions are legendary, so...
All of them have good upside.
Yeah, if you're a smart Magic player and you've put a companion into your deck, you can trigger Jodah a bonus time if it comes to that. You can trigger Reki History of Kamigawa twice, because it is casting 2 legends. There are a bunch of legendary creatures that bring a legendary friend. So if you want like a super anthem effect, you could use, I don't know, Karizev that brings along the original Ragavan, Minsk, not the good Minsk, the bad Minsk.
Not the legal Minsk.
Correct, brings a legendary hamster. There's Tolsamir, there's Driz Durden, and there's Tatsunari Toad Rider, who I kind of forgot about Tatsunari, but maybe we were supposed to be playing Leyline Bindings and Fable of the Mirror Breakers in our Tatsunari decks.
Tatsunari was, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you get a frog, right?
You get a legendary frog. Legendary frog. Kami. How can you forget Kami?
How can I forget about Kami? Whose name is strangely similar to Kermit. How could I forget about it? It's so close.
And the last legend that stood out to me is Arnie Brokenbrow. He's got the boast ability to reset his power to be like higher than the base power of your next biggest creature. And it turns out that if you have an Arnie and a Jodah, that's 2 legends, so the double anthem is in play. So you have a 7/7 Jodah and a 5/5 Arnie. But if you then use Arnie's boast ability, Arnie checks what's the next biggest creature, which is a 7/7, and says, all right, I'm going to go up to 8 power. So he's going to be 8 power, and then he also gets Jodah's anthem on top of that, so he becomes 10 power.
Is that how it works?
It is.
That sounds like layers.
No, it works. It really works. I played a lot more Arnie Brokenbrow than I should have, because I keep trying to make Bard class happen in Pioneer. But that's one of the cool things that he can do. He does it with a Hero's Blade as well.
Okay.
He works really nicely with Anthem effects because he specifies base power.
Okay, great. Oh, it specifies. Okay, it's correctly made, so we don't have to worry about layers.
Yeah. So Arnie gets huge with Jodah. You put an Embercleave on him. Embercleave, Great Henge. These trigger Jodah for like big cascades. So who knows?
Beautiful showcase art on Arnie.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Oh, it's also interesting card. Hasty V creature.
The man who headbutted a troll and won.
And won. What a man. Virgie is also legendary.
Virgie is legendary.
And you can cascade into the horn when needed. And she makes mana whenever you cast spells.
Or you can just play the horn side and cascade into Omnath if you need Omnath.
Exactly. Good old Omnath. It never fails.
Alright, so we've got a bunch of I won't call them promising ideas, but we got a bunch of ideas out there. This is the soup of ideas we have to work with. I don't know, are we missing anything important for Jodah?
Don't think so. Likely it's finding the most efficient deck that can both consistently utilize the cascade effect to a good use, be effectively casted or get into play, and make sure the anthem is actually a relevant part of the text.
Yeah, that sounds like a decent goal. So let's just look at a couple concepts. These come from different places. Some are from people in our Faithless Brewing Discord. Great to see the community at work on the card of the month. And some are just random ones that I found elsewhere. We'll start in Pioneer, where we had 2 different takes on a Pyre of Heroes humans deck. I think this is one of the more promising ways, right? Just build human tribal, which we know to be okay. Put Pyre into it, which has some cute interactions. I think Pyre, a 2-drop into an extraction specialist, is proven to be quite good.
Yeah.
And then, all you have to do is just push your curve up a little bit, get some 4-drops in there, and then get 1 Jodah. That's the big draw, is that you can have all the benefits of Jodah without having to play a million copies of it.
You can get all the benefits of Yoda without playing your Yoda.
So we have a list from Rich Ellis and a list from DJeffMTG, both from our Discord. So Rich has made his a Yorion deck, which makes sense to me, but he's, primarily in, I want to say black and white at the bottom of the curve. But as you get higher up the curve, you got to branch out. Like at a certain point, if you're putting a rainbow legend on the top, why not allow yourself to play some blue cards? So there's Ether Channelers here. The 4-drops come from like an Urtai, a Hostage Taker, a Micromancer. Oh, Micromancer, that's interesting.
It goes, that's why he has the Final Push on the Thoughtseize.
Oh, okay.
The curve goes from Orsov into Esper with really tiny bits of gruel. But this is quite clearly an Orsov deck with a tiny bit of blue and even less so red and green. There's like, what, 2 red cards and 2 greens, including Jodah?
Yeah, not much.
So it's basically Esper besides the top end and Orsov in the beginning.
But because this deck is almost all creatures, with the exception of some Fatal Push and Thoughtseize, you are allowed to play Secluded Courtyard, Unclaimed Territory. You can even play Plaza of Heroes.
Yeah, 12.
Although in this case, Rich Ellis makes a note that he doesn't have that many legends in this deck, so he's actually not sure if he's using Jodah to his best advantage, right? He's actually built up more of a just the good humans kind of deck, where there's, you know, the little mini chain of Archfiend Vessel into Extraction Specialist with Charming Princes. This is not as legendary as it could be.
I'm a bit afraid with this one, mostly in the regards of the mana base in a Yorion deck in Pioneer. Without Cavern of Souls and without cards like Sigurat, you start to run really low on the capability of lands that tap for more than 1 mana. And it gets a bit frisky.
You could play, Mana Confluence if you...
Don't finish that. Don't even finish that sentence.
Like,
let it rest.
okay.
Let it rest. Let it at ease. I would rather not play a color than forcing myself to play Mana Confluence in my Yorion deck as a 4-off.
Claudio played 1 in his winning Niv list on the challenge this weekend. I'll just put it that way. 1 out of 60.
1 in a 60. That means it was a forced decision, not a Yorionized decision.
Now, if we look at this alternative Pyre Humans deck, again, still in Pioneer, this is from DJeffMTG, who's mainly a Grixis player, but I think he saw something he liked in Jodah. He's opted for more of a almost mono-white lower part of the curve.
Yeah.
Instead of Archfiend Vessel, it's Dauntless Bodyguard, Thraben Inspector, Charming Prince, Extraction Specialist. We haven't mentioned any legendary cards yet. So the legendary is all the rest. There's Thalia's, Catilda Dawnheart Prime. This is the 2-mana Catilda that's green and white. That is a kind of pseudo-ramp card that is a legend and a human. Then you have Adeline, you have 3-mana Thalia, 2 copies of
Lagueza.
Lagrella the Magpie. That's like a Fiend Hunter, but it's a legend.
It's a Fiend Hunter for both players.
Ooh.
So you can exile a creature of your own if you want and get it back when it dies.
And then Lagrella grows when you do that.
Yeah, exactly.
1 General Kudro, 2 Urtai Resurrected, 1 Hostage Taker, 1 Joyra Weatherlight Captain. Whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. She is a 4-mana human legend. So the reason we have these 4 drops is because we have the 4 Pyre of Heroes and 2 Jodahs on top.
Yeah. Sorry, in the case of Lagrella, she doesn't grow. The creature that returns gets back with 2 counters.
Oh, wow. Okay. My mistake. Yeah, so again, if you're building a human tribal, you do have to, ask yourself, how many legends am I playing? Right? Because there's not
that many.
The good humans are not legendary. There's some.
Some of them are, but it's not most of them. Like Talia and Adeline. And did I mention Talia? There's also some Adeline.
I think Jaren Corrupted Bishop is okay. I think General Kudro is pretty good. I play more than one of those personally.
And Darrick is a great sideboard card. Campbell is a great sideboard card. And yeah.
One other possibility for humans tribal in Pioneer is to forget about Pyre, right? Pyre is, it's fine. It's a little slow. And just say, okay, what about the best thing humans can do is curve out and play Collected Company. So I do that, right? I build a deck that's just 1 drops, 2 drop, 3 drop humans with Collected Companies. But then because I have no respect for math, I've just decided to make it a 5-color mana base and put some Jodahs on top. So we have a list here. This is from IslandGoSAMe, popular Twitch streamer and pioneer. He's been crushing it with this Bushwhacker Gruul deck.
Yeah.
So the list that he was testing was 4 Collected Company, 3 Jodah, and then a selection of legendary adjacent humans. So 3 Lagrellas, 2 Shana Purifying Blade. Oh, that's actually a human. Interesting. 3 Adelines, 4 Generals Enforcer. Not a legendary, but it's a 2/3 for 2, a human that gives all of your legendary humans indestructible. mean, this deck looks pretty bad, but I don't know. I didn't actually see how this deck went when he tested it.
I have no... I didn't get to see it, sadly.
3 Catildas.
The Shanna is what just breaks my mind.
So Shanna requires gaining life to do anything, right?
Yep.
Where's the life gain coming from? Just her own lifelink?
General Enforcer, I think, gains life in a matter, in a way or form. Let me check that. Let me check. It might. Or it might not. I think it does. It does not.
Okay.
But it has amazing text in the form of legendary humans you control have indestructible.
Yeah.
But yeah, no life gain.
Interesting. Okay, so maybe we don't need Shanna Purifying Blade.
I mean, he's just trying to maximize legendaries, but playing Shanna over Kudro just destroys me. Also, I'm about to PM something to Dan that's gonna destroy his mind, which is a Twitter thread with the 4 pictures of Doomsday winning with Sheoldred in Legacy.
Oh no.
In today's Legacy Challenge. All of them different wins against different players that just couldn't deal with a 4-5 vanilla stick. A lot of them, because he just went turn 1 Dark Ritual into Sheoldred.
Oh my god. Brainstorm, take 6.
Yeah, Doomsday, Delver conceding with double Force of Will, Force of Negation in hand. Brainstorm, of course, never casted, standing there. Affinity decks, 8 cast, unable to even cast anything that draws 2 cards. And, of course, Mono Red, unable to do with a 4-5 beatdown stick.
My god. Alright, well, the next deck I'm going to talk about does have a Sheoldred in it. This is my first attempt at actually brewing something with Jodah. And what I wanted to do first was focus on that Velki Tibalt Cascade interaction. So I built the deck in such a way that I will always hit Velki. That means that I have no other legendaries at 0, 1, or 2. And anytime I play a 3 or 4 mana legend, I'm going to cascade into, well, any 3-drop will cascade into Tibalt.
Yeah, I was about to say, that doesn't make any sense.
But any 4-drop could either get a Tibalt or some other 3-drop legend. And I'm basically playing Jund with Irresponsible Mana Base, which I haven't actually sketched out yet.
Risky Shan.
But it's inspired by a Soul of Windgrace Jund deck that Claudio had posted, and actually we'll talk about that in our Soul of Windgrace section.
Yeah.
But the idea here is that, yeah, you have some decent value legends, mostly in Jund colors. So we'll start with Liliana the Veil, that counts. I'm playing 1 copy of Squee as my kind of escapable legend. Croxa would normally be in that role, but Croxa will interfere with my plan of cascading into Tibalt. 1 Sheoldred, 3 Soul of Windgrace, 2 Jodah the Unifier, and 1 Asika's Chariot. Oh, 1 Celestus as well. That's also a legendary permanent that can cascade into Tibalt.
Yes.
So not a huge number of legends, but some. And then the rest of the deck is just interactive cards, right? A kind of Jundy selection of cards. Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Fatal Push, Thoughtseize, Traverse the Ulvenwald, because one of the things we're trying to do is set up Soul of Windgrace by using Setter Wayfinders and Fable of the Mirror Breakers, so maybe I can just get away with Delirium, and then I don't have to play that many copies of Jodah. And 3 Leyline Bindings.
I just can't deal with the fact that the flip side of Fable is not legendary. But yeah, 3 Leyline Bindings seems ambitious, to say the least. There has been a lot of talk about this Pioneer Leyline Binding deck, and I haven't faced it yet, but I hear people complaining about it.
Which one?
Like 5-color domain control. I think people just see 5-color and assume it's enigmatic, and they are all complaining about... Like, they're complaining about 2 different decks as if it was 1. But I did see some lists of like a 5-color Shadow Prophecy, Leyline Binding, Omnath, Ertai. Like, Yorion for Ertai, for Omnath, for Leyline Binding, all in.
I mean, that could be the Jodah deck.
That could be a Jodah deck. That could be the new Neve.
One of the ways that you can cast Jodah and Cascade in the same turn is to have Omnath in play a fetch land. Now you've got 9 mana. That's enough for Jodah plus your second legend to cascade into Tibalt. I mean, that's a real plan.
That's, yeah, exactly.
And Omnath is one of those cards that is actually really good and sees no play in Pioneer, so...
The lack of efficient fetch lands is destroying it. for good, right? Because if it didn't, it would be freaking everywhere. Why wouldn't you play Omnath if you could? Also, I'm shocked to see some Yorion Azorius control versions playing 4-lane banding. They have just slapped in 8 triumphs of color in Pioneer. They just went the modern way in Pioneer.
This is the way. I mean, this is the way. This is what we warned people would happen. So let's shift over to Modern for one last deck list before we
jump back to the flashback.
Exactly. So we talked about the interaction of Winota, Joiner of Forces, and Jodah, Unifier of Forces. Is that also Forces?
Yeah.
Jodah, the Unifier. Okay.
Jodah, Unifier of Forces.
That's it. Win Jodah. This list comes to us from Mildpro, a member of our Faithless Brewing Discord. I know that Mildpro was consulting with Darshik, the current champion of
Yognoda.
Not Winogmoth. Yognoda. Damn it, Zach.
Zach destroyed you.
Darshik is the current champion of Yognoda. Wait, what? Yes.
Yes. Darshik was the current champion of Yognoda after Anthony, and now
okay,
he's an advisor in. Come on, you can do it.
Thank you. In Win Jodah.
Yes. Yes, we got there.
All right, so what we need 4 Winotas. We need a mix of non-humans to attack with and humans for Winota to find. I guess what they decided was that you should, if Jodah is going to be your payoff, just play the full playset of Jodahs. Just believe, right? Kind of like we had to go up to 4 Winota, 4 Yawgmoth. Same concept, but we'll put all 4 Jodahs in. You're going to want to attack with the non-humans. The non-humans don't have to be legends, right? So in this build, they settled on the pretty standard package of Strangerroot Geist and Prosperous Innkeeper Voice of Resurgence, borrowing from the Yawgmoth version. Seasoned Pyromancer Eldritch Evolution. So there's actually not that many legends in here. Their main legends are Adeline, Jodah, Winota herself, and Ragavans. So it looks like Jodah's mainly going to be our Anthem effect.
I think this might be one of the best ideas for it. Just using Yoda as a way to replace the really bad cards, like the one that gives double strike, and also as a way to maybe just find extra answers in the mid to late game. Like you can have like the NAS of just like having a Yoda, play a Winota, hit an Adeline, and just reveal a huge portal of a sudden. Like I think Yoda is great at it being a top end, and like just pumping Winota and the Ragavan with +3/+3 might be enough. My only fear is we might be a bit low on legendaries.
Yeah, what if we choose more legendary token makers?
Yeah, like, what's the name of the 2-man? Like, but sadly, what you need are the 2-drops and 3-drops to be legendary non-humans, right?
So Squee can do it. I think Minsk actually makes a non-human token, so...
You could go for the lace that used to play like a lot of Rebel Masters effects. You have Minsk, which is a human that you can hit that makes a non-human, which is pretty great. So it works both ways. You have Squee, which is a non-human that makes non-humans, which is pretty great. But sadly, you also need 2-drops. What would decent 2-drops be? That's the bigger question.
Jadar, Goo Caller of Nephalia, makes a non-human and is a human legend himself.
But it's black.
But we're 5-color.
We are Naya. We are Naya with a tiny bit of black and blue, and that's what makes the mana base tick with 21 lands.
Well, this build from Mildpro is Naya, but nothing says you have to play Strangerroot Geist, Voice of Resurgence, and Eldritch Evolution. You don't have to play those.
Eldritch Evolution is pretty great, but yeah, no need for Strangerroot Geist and Voice. I think if we're able to replace those for efficient 2-3 mana legendaries, it would work quite better. Season Pyromancer, I think, is unreplaceable as both a human that makes non-humans and draws cards. That's literally everything you want.
Which card?
Season Pyro.
Yeah, okay.
But it's also red, which is Winota's color, so it's fine. You're gonna be playing red.
I tried to rent a deck with Fable the Mirror Breaker. I just couldn't afford it. They're so freaking expensive, so I had to play Season Pyromancer instead. It's like my budget. Fable the Mirror Breaker.
Budget Fable?
Yes. Fables are like 60 online, and Season Pyromancer is like 8.
Devastating.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's a range of avenues to explore. More, what are you thinking so far? I mean, based on what we've talked about.
It's hard. I don't love any of the Pioneer deck lists, mostly because I think the one I'm the closer to liking IslandGoSAMe with a few tweaks. But I struggle to see how Yoda makes those decks better. Like, you know me, whenever I try to brew something, I always try to go for, if not the most powerful one, but rather where the card makes the deck better. Like, if I'm just gonna brew 4-color Yorion and another Yoda, I can just, like, if we're doing stuff that doesn't, it isn't better because of the card, you just grab the best deck possible that can fit it and run it with it, right? Because if we're just playing humans that is worse with Yoda, why not play 4-color control and play Yoda? Like, if we're gonna go to that extreme, let's just go to that extreme completely. So, the list I like the most actually are the one from IslandGoSAMe and something like the one you have created in Pioneer, where Yoda actually enables for a pretty consistent Tibalt, which is really powerful, especially if you have a board as well.
Do you think that you would play something like 5-color Yorion Omnath in Modern and just add Jodos to it and see what happens?
No. That's exactly what I wouldn't do, because I know the result of that. I'm gonna get a 4-1 and I'm gonna cast Yoda exactly one time.
Well, just tell yourself you have to play more than one copy.
No, yeah, but why do that when we can try to find good ideas with it? Like, I think when Yoda is actually a deck that gets upside from the presence of Yoda, your 5-color build that is actually using Yoda as a way to Tibalt consistently, I think actually has upside of the card. Like, it actually plays to the card's strengths rather than having it as a fun one-off.
Alright, that makes sense.
That's, I think, where I'm going to dig deeper into. Actually trying to exploit the Anthem effect, and maybe just playing in a fair deck, right? Like, turn 5, cast it after a bunch of idiots, and it just wins the game in one swing. Or if not, making sure I can get a bulky out of it.
Yeah, I think I broadly agree with that. So we'll start plucking away at Yoda. I am like dreading casting this card. These decks are ambitious, but ambition is good. We gotta aim high. Clearly people want to see this happen, and I almost, at various points while researching this, I almost talked myself into like a couple of these things. So we have some material to work with, and it should be an interesting month.
It will be. At least it will be a colorful one. Been a while since we focused on a 5-color one.
Oh yeah. All right, well, that kicks off Project Jodah the Unifier. Our last order of business for today is to talk about Soul of Windgrace, a card we brewed with last week and had some opportunities to test, so we should share some of our findings. I don't know if you agree with this, Morde, but I think we were right about this card. We talked about its virtues. At the time, it had, seen a little bit of play. It's seeing more play now, right? I think it's starting to pick up steam. If you're interested in Soul of Windgrace, just buy it now. It's going to go up in price.
Oh.
Not by a huge amount, but like it's going to be more than...
Buy them if you're going to use them. That's the thing.
If you're going to use it, it's $3 right now. It could be $6.
I think it's going to go up to like 5, 6, yeah. Like, it's a buy if you're going to use them, not buy for speculation.
Exactly. So we'll start with aspiringspike, right? So he had originally put Soul of Windgrace into John Sagavan. Wrote about this on Channel Fireball again this week. Said he still thinks it's good. You had a chance to play around with one of his newer concepts.
Yeah. So, aspiringspike had this 5-color Delirium deck list with 60 cards going around. He said he was liking it a lot, got a trophy. So, of course, I went, grabbed the exact same deck list and Yorionized it, because you guys know me.
And in this case, I agree with you, because I looked at the list that Spike posted and I was like, this is just 5-color Yorion good stuff. He just trimmed 20 cards and called it Delirium, but it's quite literally the same package. It's Traverse, Bauble, Binding. It's just the good cards. Ren and 6, Expressive Iteration, Unholy Heat. He's got 2 Emeralds instead of 1, but why play 1 Omnath when you could play more?
Yeah. So the card was actually pretty decent. I got a 3-2 that should have been a 4-1, but I was racing around the kittens. As you have seen, they are on full on release. I was on stream and I was like 4 minutes ahead, 3 minutes below on the control mirror. But actually, the card that was about to win me the game was Windgrace, because we both ran out of win cons. My opponent played 3 days undoing. They were out of removal in the deck, and they had a Supreme Verdict, and they cast it, and I was so focused on the card I forgot to give Windgrace Indestructible in order for it to win the game on its own.
Oh, wow.
But my opponent was literally out of Solitudes. He had 9 cards in the deck, and I had 8. And it was my last creature, and I would have single-handedly won that game. Just being a 5-4 hit on stick that drew 4 cards because it cycled my lands.
So at this point, Leyland Binding is a modern staple. It's not surprising to see 4 copies here. But 4 copies of Shadow Prophecy, that does make this a proper domain deck. And that also helps fill the graveyard for Delirium and for Windgrace.
Yeah.
So you had 4 Shadow Prophecies in the deck as well. How many Omnaths and Soul of Windgrace did you end up playing? So you were going up to 80 cards. Now Spike only played 1 of each.
I had 4 and 1.
4 Omnath, 1 Soul?
Yeah. So I never traversed for the Soul, only once, and it was only because I needed the ETB, because I had an Omnath in play and I needed an extra land in order to kill Planeswalkers with the 4 damage. And that's something that was super achievable, but besides that, it works as I always said, it's the 5th Omnath when you need it. And I cannot play 5 Omnaths because rules. But yeah, card was pretty good. Also, besides the loss to control, which I think would have been a win, we got super unlucky against Rakdos Scam, we got Blood Moon into a 0-land Shadow Prophecy. We were 1 land away from stabilizing that, and the Shadow Prophecy hit 0 lands in 5. And then next round, I went turn 3 Shadow Prophecy and hit 5 lands, and I was like, why? Like, it was like super immediately, like 0 lands into 5 lands. Why?
This is your punishment for putting 1 copy of the card of the week into an 80 card deck.
But I had tutors.
It's wrong. Morde.
I had 4 traverse.
But you knew you weren't going to traverse for Soul. You told us that last week.
I traversed once. That's more than I traversed for Solitude. Really? Wow. Indeed, I never traversed for Solitude. I did traverse for Fury, though. Why wouldn't you traverse for Fury?
Okay, so were you liking the Shadow Prophecies here? I mean,
I love Shadow Prophecy.
Shell make sense to you?
Yeah, I really like Shadow Prophecy. Shadow Prophecy makes Delirium super easy.
Right, it puts itself plus up to 3 other cards in the graveyard.
Yeah, like sometimes it almost enables Delirium on its own. Like that, Shadow Prophecy plus 1 type tends to be the 3 types you need a lot of the time. Like land, instant, plus Planeswalker, creature, or enchantment. Even in some games, I actually grab differently just to enable Domain Delirium. Like I had a Holy Hit in hand and I was like, should I grab this binding or this ending? And just the binding being an enchantment was clearly the tiebreaker. Send it to the graveyard, then ending, then hit, and get immediately Delirium.
Nice.
So yeah, super cool deck, super fun idea. Spike was playing 2 Emrakul's main deck, and more than once I wish I did, so maybe I'm adding the second to the sideboard. I was able to get 7 times in my graveyard by turn 6-7 practically every game.
7 types?
Yeah, consistently casting 6 mana Emrakul.
Wow.
Because enchantment is super easy when you play 4 Dress Downs and 4 Bindings. Planeswalker is super easy when you play 4 Teferi for Bread and 6. Because either they die or you win, right? Instant gets easy when you're playing both and Holy Hit and Prophecy. Sorcery is the hardest one because you only have ending.
Well, you have Expressive Iteration, right?
No.
And Traverse.
You don't have Expressive Iteration. It's replaced by Shadow Prophecy. They fill a similar role. Expressive Iteration is a great card, but it isn't as cool of a card in 4 color because you can never cast it efficiently on turn 3. Unlike other decks with a much lower curve, casting Expressive Iteration on turn 3 tends to be really bad because unless you hit specifically a 1 mana removal you need or Abundant Growth, it's only finding you 2 lands most of the time. And tapping down for it tends to be extremely risky, while Shadow Prophecy being both an instant and something you just grab the cards you're gonna need.
Okay, I'm looking at your deck list more closely now. So I thought when you said you took Spike's list and Yorionized it, that you had kept his same ratios. But actually what you did was you just went back to the original build that Spike had de-Yorionized, which is just 5-color good stuff. Your list is closer to the Morde 5-color good stuff list, in where you've concluded you don't need Expressive Iteration.
Spikes doesn't play it either.
Yes, it does. It plays 4.
Oh, it does.
And it plays 4 Fury, 0 Solitude. So you're on 4 Solitude, 1 Fury. So it's fine. I mean,
I think 4 Solitude is better. I didn't realize Spike was also running for Expressive Iteration, and maybe I should. But I think you're starting to reach the point where you're too low on threats. But maybe that's why he has the 2 Emrakuls. You know, that's actually something I might consider for my next league. I copy-pasted Spike's list, and what I was brewing while playing Popper, because I was doing 2 stuff at the same time, I might have got the express iterations. Look at that.
Yeah, this card is probably banned, right?
This card is probably not interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like, we're just, like, haggling over numbers over the good cards. So I don't know, like, what to make of all this. Like, this is what brewing looks like in 2022. I'm happy that Shadow Prophecy is in here. I'm happy that Soul of Windgrace is competing for slots. But maybe within, a few weeks, we'll just be like, oh, Soul of Windgrace, that's one of the good cards. And it's not even... I mean, there's nothing really happening in this deck besides this.
So I'm shocked. Spike has literally 7 creatures in his deck, right? 8?
It's extremely threat light. It's shockingly so.
Yeah, shocking. Now I'm a bit shocked. Yeah, maybe that's the way to take it. I'm gonna dig a bit into that.
It's mostly removal card draw and like a couple threats.
Yeah. Spike literally wins with the Emrakuls. Interesting. I might take a closer look. Add some iterations, cut some of the stuff, just go up 4 Fury, 4 Solitude. Straight up all removal with 2 Emrakuls and hope for the best.
So one more piece of data to consider about whether Soul of Windgrace is just one of the good cards. So Claudio, we mentioned, won the Modern Challenge,
Pioneer Challenge.
Won the Pioneer Challenge with his signature Niv deck, but he also, he likes mid-rangey kind of stuff. He likes Enigmatic, and in this case, he decided he wanted to try Soul of Windgrace and Pioneer, just surround it with good cards.
Boomerjund.
Now, what are the green cards that even make green worth considering? Because basically Rakdos is a better version of that in Pioneer. What Claudio thought was, all right, if I want Soul of Windgrace to be my good card, so he's playing 3 copies here, I need some ways to get lands in the graveyard. So he's got 3 Satyr Wayfinders for that, in addition to 4 Fable of the Mirror Breaker. And between those, he felt like he had enough to enable like a light Delirium package with Traverse the Ulvenwald. The rest of the deck, I talked about this, I built like a 5-color version in the Jodah section, but yeah, it's just generically good cards. I'm not sure what to make of like the actual traversing for 1-ofs, like 1 Sheoldred, 1 Clothis, 1 Oxyvagonus, love that.
1 Tracker.
1 Tracker, 1 Skoo. So I'm not totally convinced by like the exact numbers, but as a proof of concept, Claudio said he really liked the Soul of Windgrace here.
Yeah, I actually was pretty impressed with that deck list. It's just like straight up Boomerjund ported into Pioneer. I like the Traverse package. The deck plays a lot of weird stuff like enchantments with Fable and Clothis, a lot of lands, instant and sorceries are a lot. 3 Planeswalkers as well, so I think it can get Delirium semi-consistently. No Fable Passage is a bit shocking, at least as a 2-of or 3-of, both for Soul and for Traverse.
I think that's the biggest thing. So I tested like a bunch of Soul of Windgrace decks this week, and one of them was a Pioneer build that David sketched up where, okay, we felt like you have to play 4 Fable Passage, and that means you need a bunch of basics. Claudio didn't do any of that.
Claudio didn't give a single fuck. Maybe you don't need a bunch of basics. Maybe with 3-4 basics are good and just replace 2 pathways with Fable. I don't think you need a lot of Fable. 2-3 Fables are likely more than enough.
So I think his mana was much cleaner. One of the things that I really struggled with was drawing all these crappy-ass basic lands in a 3-color deck. So maybe Claudio was right. Maybe you don't need to play Fable and everything. Maybe you can just rely on Wayfinder and Fable. Sorry, I should clarify. Fable Passage versus Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Maybe you don't need to play Fable Passage. You can just use Fable of the Mirror Breaker instead of Wayfinder and Liliana to just like discard lands.
It's a lot of discard outlets. Like, it makes a decent amount of sense, especially with opponent also discarding some of the time, opponents playing Failed Passages of their own, Lily plussing and opponent discarding lands of their own. Maybe there's enough.
Alright, food for thought. So we have some evidence now that Soul of Windgrace might just be one of the good cards from this set. What we don't quite know is, can it be the featured card of a bad deck? And this is what I set out to test. I took 4 Soul of Windgrace and surrounded it by 56 of the worst cards in Modern. So just see what would happen. So yeah, I'm talking about my Bard class deck. Modern Windgrace Bard class, which I talked about last week. Jumped into a league with this. quickly went 0-5, like 0-2, 0-2, 0-2, 0-2, 1-2.
Oh, I have. There's few times in my Magic career I have went 0-5. None of them in paper, thankfully. But ouch.
And my match notes were pretty consistent. It was like, well, I couldn't stop them. They killed me on turn 3. Well, I couldn't stop them. They killed me on turn 3.
Couldn't defend, died turn 3. Couldn't defend. Game 2 was close thanks to mouse lockdown, but it drew second outburst. Couldn't kill fast enough, missed kill game 1. Might have been able to win it. Couldn't defend, died turn 3. And no way to get our own big dragons.
I mean, it was almost like whatever they chose to do, right? So I played against a mill deck, a calibrated blast deck, a living end deck, a really fast prowess deck, and Murktide. Like, whatever their threat was, I couldn't answer it. Like, that just wasn't in the cards for the way that I built this deck. So I was like, well, I hope I can race them, but I could not race them. That being said, like, 0-5 is pretty bad, right? It can't be that bad. So I thought I should just try one more time, no changes, run it back. The deck's already rented, hit join. Was it that bad? Well, the answer was yes. Yes, it is really that bad. This time I actually did win my first 2 matches. Clean 2-0s. I got paired against, more fair decks. Blue-white control and like a mono-white taxes. Started to give me some hope that, okay, actually, yeah, it is powerful when you're doing your thing with Bard class and whatever else. But that was quickly disabused of that. I lost 2 in a row to Burn and once to the Rakdos scam deck. So 2-8 overall with Bard class in Modern. And apart from that dismal record, like I think I only got to level 3 of Bard class 4 or 5 times in all these games. So at that point, like, why bother? If the deck that's built around Bard class just can't even get to level 3, then it's not worth doing.
Did you just draw Rada every single game?
Yeah, well, I was playing 2.
yeah, but every single screenshot has a Rada somewhere.
This is the 2-mana Radha that taps for a green, so she ramps you to Windgrace. I mean, that was fine. Like, curving out into Windgrace happened a lot. I got a bunch of information about how Windgrace plays. It's pretty good. Not amazing.
Yeah, Windgrace was pretty good.
But, the deck as a whole could not be saved. So much for Bard class. Shifting over to Pioneer. So one of the concepts David sketched up for us was a Jundi package, but not traditional Jund. He was interested in specifically the Fires of Invention Shigeki Jukai Visionary Invoke Despair combo pack. Really cute interaction between Fires of Invention and the channel ability on Shigeki.
Yeah.
You can spend all your mana on that, and you still have 2 free spells available. We thought that Soul of Windgrace would help boost our mana so we can get like Fires online quicker, get bigger channels off Shigeki, and, get to 5 for Invoke Despair. So I put 3 Soul of Windgrace in there, and then we made those mana-based adjustments we were just talking about. 4 Fabled Passage and a bunch of basics. I tried 2 Emergent Sequence as well. I think I talked about how I kind of like the potential of putting more lands in the graveyard. This deck was okay. I mean, it was Jundi. Jund is going to be a 45% deck any way you slice it. And yeah, I went 2-3 where the matches I lost, I felt grievously wronged by fate. Like, oh, I had the right cards. I just drew them out of order, etc., etc. Like, that's Jund. At the end of the day, you're going to be 2-3, possibly 3-2. So I felt like this deck as a whole it wasn't like sitting on a gold mine. It was okay. What I liked about Windgrace specifically was that when you're paired against aggressive decks, you really, really have to cut Fires of Invention. You have to just cut all of them. They're not helpful. They're a card down, and they make you play on your own turn, which makes like your Fatal Push and your sideboard Noxious Grass and Abrupt Decay is like a lot worse. So what I was doing when I got paired against aggro like 3 times was I was cutting all the fires, but I found that Soul of Windgrace actually did a great job of just helping me build up to a healthy supply of mana anyway. So that was pretty cool. Like, that was, again, like Windgrace being a decent card on its own. And yeah, I found that like the fact that I had a big mana engine in the form of Shigeki made Windgrace a little more valuable.
So it sounds like all upside. What was the problem? No way to actually get it to that spot where everything works?
Oh, the problem is that it's a synergy Jund deck, and Jund is not meant to be a synergy deck.
Yeah, Shandy is meant to be good stuff, good card, good top deck.
I mean, like, I have a screenshot here where I'm paired against Rakdos, right? And I should be a bigger version of them.
Yeah.
But my hand is like 3 Fires of Invention, 2 Invoke Despairs, and an Extinction Event.
And 2 lands in play on turn 6.
This shouldn't happen, right? Like, I should be playing Fable and Bloodtithe Harvester. It's criminal to not play Fable.
Those fires should be Fables, those Invoke Prejudice should be a threat on 3 mana.
Right, so you could cut the fires, say Windgrace does that, play Fable instead, and then you have something closer to what Claudio played, right? There's no synergy, just...
Good little stuff.
Just play the good cards, and Soul of Windgrace can be a good card.
I agree, yeah.
And the mana base, as I mentioned, was actually kind of punishing. Like, I got screwed several times by having too many basics. So that's something to consider. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to play this specific build again.
Yeah, I think the Shun version by Claudio looks a lot more interesting.
So after some frustrating leagues with Bard class and then Shigeki Fires, I wanted just like a palate cleanser. And when I'm in that mood, I go back to my girl Titania and Kiora. This is like my happy place, and I haven't played them in a long time.
Titania is your happy place?
Kiora into Titania is my happy place. I mean,
Okay.
That's such a sweet combo. So I went to the Titania's Fury deck, and we talked about this more. You suggested that I should just add the Urza Sagas directly to this deck.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm glad I did, because Zuran Orb plus Titania is like a sweet endgame, and that happened a bunch of times. And this felt good. Like here, I am playing Soul of Windgrace. It's my only black card. It's not the feature card in any stretch, right? Like this deck is trying to just go Utopia Sprawl, Arbor Elf, Kiora, Titania. Windgrace can participate if he wants to, but he doesn't have to. Right? He just has less of a role.
He's not the key, he's just a good addition.
Exactly. He supports the Kiora plan. He draws a card off Kiora. He gets me lots of mana. Brings back fetch lands for Titania. I mean, it does a little bit of stuff, not a lot, and that's fine. Brings back Urza Saga was the hope, right? This was the original John Sagavan idea. This deck was good. I mean, this deck felt great. I actually overpowered most of my opponents, which was such a change from the decks I had just been describing. I was happy.
I mean, you're playing the good cards, and Titania is a beast.
I mean, I'm playing a lot of cards you have not had cast against you in a long time, like Utopia Sprawl. I think prevailing wisdom is that Utopia Sprawl is not good anymore. I found it to be great. Like, people just were not playing the cards that killed it.
I'm just gonna say it because it's correct. Playing 2 Brennan 6 is not correct.
What number should I be playing? I was thinking 1.
I was thinking 3. If you only have 2 2-drops and they're Brennan 6, the only best thing is the third good 2-drop.
Well, this deck has several 2-drops. It has Dash Ragavan, it has Stomp for Bonecrusher Giant, and it has 2 Brennan 6. I mean, it's true. Like, the original version, as we talked about, was an Obosh deck.
Yeah.
1/3/5, but you just need some 2-drops just in case.
Yeah, you need some efficiency in there, in case your dork dies and you're not super slow.
But I like this deck a lot. I mean, I got paired against a pretty good selection of powerful decks.
Yeah.
I got paired against the 4-color Omnath,
4 real decks.
Rhinos, Grixis Shadow, and I just overpowered all of them. I just blasted through with Kiora and Titania.
Good of you to stop mentioning them when you get to Merfolk.
Yeah, I also played against Merfolk.
And Archon Creativity, which is an actual... So 4 actual tier 1 decks and Merfolk. Glad to see you didn't lose the one that matters.
I was 4-0.
Yeah.
I was like, this deck is great. I'm cruising for that 5-0. But once they played Leyline into Fable the Mirror Breaker, I was like, this is not going to go well. Like, I don't actually have interaction for specifically Creativity into Archon, and...
Yeah, there's not much interaction for that either.
They got me with that twice. I was able to just take the second game, so that was encouraging, but 4-1's not bad after the abysmal record with everything else.
It's pretty good. I actually faced a deck extremely similar to this 2 days ago, and poor my opponent when on turn 5 they got the Suran Orb of the Urza Saga, and they had a Titania, and they had 5 lands, and I went like, okay, end step, ball your Titania, and of course they went for the ballsy play of get 5/5/3s into my straight up land Supreme Verdict concede.
Oh, come on. You were playing Supreme Verdicts?
I was playing 3 Supreme Verdicts. But my opponent was so confident. They were like, okay, 5-3, how is 4-color gonna beat this? Okay, Supreme Verdict, concede.
That's not right.
It was the right thing to do, and I imagine the sadness in my opponent's face.
If your opponent sacks all their land to zero an orb with Titania, you should concede out of respect. You gotta respect the orb. I mean, that's a committed player.
Respect the orb. Yeah, I think it's great with Titania. Also, I never thought about Titania's tokens making it pro with Jodah, and that seems super fun.
I mean, it's not just fun, it's like...
extremely powerful.
Extremely powerful. Extremely powerful.
Yeah, draw 2, like Titania drawing 2 cards immediately.
I mean, my very first game with this deck, I had Utopia Sprawl into Kiora. So that's a turn 2 Kiora that immediately untaps the Utopia Sprawl land to recast Ren and 6. So I've already got a million permanents in play. Turn 3, I played Titania, draw a card off Kiora, bring back a fetch land, crack both fetch lands, right, because I still have my land drop. So now I've got 3 5/3s, I've drawn 3 cards, I've got like a million permanents in play, I've got 15 power in play, and a full group of cards. That's just like the basic curve. Yeah, and obviously that's a good draw, but that's the reason to play this particular shell, and I do recommend it. It's a lot of fun. I don't know like how good it is, but I mean, I was encouraged.
Yeah, a 4-1 is a great result, especially when it's the sad 4-1, right?
The one where we could see our name up in lights on the 5-0s, and then it got ripped away.
We are waiting for the Reddit post where Vamsing talks praises about your creativity, just to get shut out into the light. It's such.
The sad thing is that in game 3 of the last round, like I pitched to Titania to force a vigor at a key turn because I thought I was gonna have to like make a big push, and then they spill pierced it, and then like several turns later, the Titania would have won the game if I hadn't pitched it.
Such.
But I didn't know that at the time, so
we were not ready.
Decisions. All right, so that's Soul of Windgrace. What have we learned about it? Is it one of the good cards?
I think it's one of the good cards. I don't think it's one of the great cards. It's one of those cards it's good to have in your deck, in most mid-range decks, but doesn't win the game on its own as clearly as something like Omnath that, right? Like, it's a second-tier kind of great card.
I found it significantly worse than Omnath.
Yeah.
Just not drawing a card.
But the thing is, being significantly worse than Omnath is, like, the line between unplayable and significantly worse with Omnath, it's a huge stretch.
Yeah, no,
like,
it's true.
It's significantly worse than one of the top 3 cards of the format.
Yeah, fair.
So I think, even contemplating that, it leaves some spot for it to be actually quite decent.
The other thing that I thought was going to be really sweet was, okay, if I have Soul of Windgrace, gets me a land when I cast it, I can attack and get more lands. Those lands come back tapped, so it's not like as sweet as I thought. And actually, as weird as it is to say this, attacking with a Soul of Windgrace is roughly the same power level as attacking with the Fable of the Mirror Breaker token.
I agree.
Like, if you have an uncontested Fable token, that's as powerful or more than Soul of Windgrace.
No, I think in the late game, I think the life game has come relevant more than once. They gain 3 life discarding a land.
Oh, sure. But, like, you know, the Fable token also does other stuff. It draws 2 cards, it becomes another creature.
Yeah, but that's on 3 turns. Like, it's by turn 5 that all of that happens, while if you're having your Soul of Windgrace survive for 2 turns, it's also likely making more value than that.
Well, how many lands did you have in your hand? I mean, I found it pretty rare to have more than 1 or 2 lands in my hand by that stage of the game.
I tend to have multiple lands in my hand by that stage of the game, make it a mixture of Shadow Prophecies and Brennan 6s.
Okay.
Like, I tend to play more value-intensive decks that are actually doing more 2-for-1, so me flooding a tiny bit is quite common.
So the decks I was playing did not have as many lands in hand, and maybe it's a function of not having enough Ren and 6s, or just straight up card draw. I actually found that my Soul of Windgrace was competing with Ren and 6 a lot of the time. Like, if I only had just 1 fetch land, there would be the turn that I cast Windgrace, I would have to, like, skip Ren and 6.
Okay.
Which didn't feel good.
I was never in that spot, also because, first of all, I had some sort of self-mill, and my decks tend to play a lot of fetch. Yorion decks play more fetch land than non-Yorion decks. Like, that's a fact, so I had a pretty high fetch land density.
Right, but in order to have an extra fetch, you either need to like play fetch turn 1 or 2, or I mean, ideally you take your opponent's fetch land off Soul of Windgrace.
No,
sometimes that wasn't possible.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. No, I think most of my games, I even had a super good line where I accidentally placed my own. In a super grindy matchup, I placed my Soken Sun from the graveyard.
Yeah.
And I felt a bit wrong because there was a chance. It wasn't a Soken Sun, it was an Otawara. And there was a chance I would like to Otawara that back to my hand with a Red and 6 eventually. And my opponent used an Otawara, and I played the Otawara with the Windgrace to sacrifice my own Otawara to Legend Rule it.
But yeah, that's another weird tension, right? I had a similar thing happen where it's like, you can bring back a Boseiju or a Sokenzin from your graveyard.
But do you wanna get back a Boseiju or a Sokenzin?
Right, it takes them out of the Ren and 6 loop.
I tend to not get them. Unless I know I'm like out of Ren and 6s or this is gonna be a short game, I tend to let them there. I have found there's enough Faithless in Modern for me to always get a land out of my opponent, or at least 90% of the time.
It should, right? The time that annoyed me the most was my opponent had 2 Flooded Strands in their graveyard, and I was playing Jund, so I couldn't use that one. I was like, come on. I have to skip my Ren and 6 because you're playing Flooded Strands. But yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was playing 5 colors, so every single land works.
Right. So other notes is specifically the Fable Passage basic land mana base is a little bit rough and Pioneer in a multicolored deck. We talked about that. And yeah, just the fact that Soul does not actually natively draw cards means that it can't mount a comeback in the same way that Almanath can. But despite all of that, despite all those little nitpicks, I liked the card. I did. I just like enjoyed it. I enjoyed having a big mana advantage over my opponents.
It's a fun card. Like, even if it's not downright amazing, it's fun. It's a powerful, fun card. Like, I can't argue with it. At least on that aspect.
And it's very fair. Like, the advantage you get is that you will have a little more mana over the course of several turns. So it's very fair.
It's not Omnath-like. Omnath is fair in between quotes, but you cast Omnath, I don't know if it survives, you're gonna have silly turns. Windgrace is more of a, okay, I'm gonna develop this threat. If it survives, I can give it indestructible, and then I'm gonna cycle through my lands. It's gonna be pretty decent.
Windgrace to me is like a decent body that gives you some extra mana to work with.
Yeah.
But that doesn't win the game. The rest of your deck has to win the game.
No, it's not gonna win the game. It's gonna be an extra piece of cardboard. More than one extra piece, and that's the important part.
And that's enough. That's enough to be a good contributor to multiple formats.
Exactly. So, with that being said, I think we're done for the night. Hope everybody enjoyed. We had a lot of fun with Soul. We are gonna likely have a lot of fun with Jodah or cry a tiny bit in our sleep. You will find about that next week.
Exactly. We'll be testing some Maria, Scholar of Antiquity, sleeving up a Jodah if we have to. So yeah, a lot of cool ideas to work with, and excited to see what this week brings.
Exactly. Have a nice night, everybody. Dan, thanks so much for joining me tonight. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Deck lists for this episode can be viewed at our homepage, faithlessbrewing.com. And tune in next time for testing results with Maria, Scholar of Antiquity. Support for this podcast is provided by brewers like you. If you're a fan of the show, you can join our community at patreon.com/faithlessbrewing for Discord access, bonus content, and more. That's all for today. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.